Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar. I really appreciate that you're all really busy, so thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. Hopefully the webinar will last between about 15 and 20 minutes, so you can enjoy whilst watching while drinking a cup of tea or coffee. Couple of bits of housekeeping. In terms of the recording, we'll make sure that we distribute the recording after the webinar to those that attended and maybe colleagues that couldn't attend but who registered. There is a questions box on the right hand side, so you've got the opportunity to ask any questions. What I'll normally try and do is cover those at the end of the webinar and answer any that crop up. My name's Tom Lyes. I'm Director of Engagement here at Lawyer Checker, and the aim of today is to take a closer look at some of the real-time risk data that we use to help protect our clients and understand why they find this helpful. I think one of the myths in the market about Lawyer Checker is that our search only checks to see how frequently bank details have been searched. Hopefully, what you'll be able to take away today is some learnings as to why we're ultimately more than that. Let's have a little bit of context and background. Why do we do what we do? Well, at Lawyer Checker, we get out of bed in the morning to protect law firms. We're quite a niche business in that respect, in terms of what we do. Our overall objective is to be a trusted partner for law firms and anything fraud or cyber related. We're robustly market tested, and in October last year, we completed our 1 millionth transaction. And we're also used on 1 in 4 residential purchases in England and Wales. So most of you will have come across Lawyer Checker in some shape or form, even if you don't use us all the time. We're also not just used in residential conveyancing. We're used across real estate teams, private client, and commercial departments too. We've seen a big increase in commercial teams use Lawyer Checker over the last couple of years, because ultimately the risk is still the same, and quite often the value of money is even more significant and potentially more attractive to cyber criminals. We're recognised by insurers. I'm not daft enough to sit here in front of you and say that using Lawyer Check is going to bring your premiums down on its own, but I think it does form part of that wider risk conversation when you're talking to your insurer. And it's a really useful tool for you to be able to sell your risk story to insurers. So if you can demonstrate and evidence that you do a Lawyer Checker search on every purchase, that's quite a powerful tool. And we've had clients in the past who I know have seen the benefits from their insurers of that. We're also actively preventing fraud. We live and breathe risk and fraud. That's what our knowledge base is all based on, and that's what we're doing day in, day out. So there's a lot of sense in working with a business like us who are an expert in a very specific field. I thought a good place to start is let's have a look, a little bit of an overview of where risk currently sits from a fraud perspective. And one of the ways that we can measure what the market is like is by looking at the SRA scam alerts. In the last 3 months of last year, the scam alerts rocketed. So 50% of all last year's alerts occurred in the last 3 months. Whereas this year, we've again seen that continue. So in January, there were 21 SRA scam alerts published in comparison to just 12 in January last year. And this month, we're already over 20. I think when I did the presentation on Thursday or Friday, it was 20. So we're now closer to sort of 25. This highlights the increase in fraudulent activity. Why? Well, we know it's a really busy market. We know that transaction volumes are high. We know that individual and firm caseloads are high. And criminals are intelligent people. They know that too. And they will look to use that to their advantage, and they're actively out there in the market. One of the things that's been cropping up quite a lot in the actual SRA scam alerts in the last couple of months is the re-emergence of cloned websites. So cloned websites is where a criminal will scrape the data from a firm's website and create a fake law firm using lots of that data to try and make it look genuine and real. We actually had an email yesterday from a friend of ours in the industry who one of his clients had their website scraped and cloned, and there was someone out there effectively purporting to be them. So how can we help with this? Well, we have a direct API. If you don't know what an API is, it's effectively an integration. So our system will talk to the SRA system every day, and it will notify us on SRA scam alerts and anything else that may impact your transaction. What's the anything else? So anything else could be solvency. So last week, at the start of the week, there was a firm in Yorkshire that was intervened by the SRA. That was a great example of where that data comes in really handy. We had searches in our system for that firm, and I'll come on to how we dealt with that for the people that had searched against them. Obviously, intervention is really, really important. So if a firm gets intervened, we pick up on that immediately. Scam alerts. So a good way that scam alerts can be used to help protect fee earners is if the scam alert is an email modification fraud. So let's say someone at John Smith & Co Solicitors has had their email impersonated. If you're dealing with that firm and you get the scam alert through on one of your lawyer checker searches, if they've had their email impersonated, you're probably going to be really cautious as to what you do via email, and you're probably going to look to note that on your file because that's a risk indicator. Other things that we have access to that we show are disciplinary against staff. There's a great example that my MD Chris will always talk about from the early lawyer checker days, where we had a firm who carried out a search. The search had a disciplinary notice against an individual that effectively said that individual could not work in conveyancing without supervision. Well, the firm did some research after reading the report, and it was obvious that that person was actually working in an office by themselves without any supervision. And if you were about to send 300,000 to in a transaction like that, I think you'd be quite right to be wary. We also manage the change in bank account details from firms. So there are lots of legitimate reasons why a law firm might change its bank details. When we see this happen, what we will do is we will get the firm to write to us, sign a letter from a partner, and we will attach that letter to the firm's results. So when you search a firm for the first time on new bank details, you've actually got some assurity and confidence as to why those bank details are showing as either never been searched before or only searched on a few occasions. And also anything else we think you may need to know. If we think something has a genuine and strong impact on the transaction, we'll probably change the frequency of the result to act as a further red flag for you as well. So a key element of that is that this is live real-time data. It's coming through to us from our integration. It's real time, it's live, it's as it happens. We know that the market is volatile and a lot can change in a short period of time. So it's important you have a way in your risk management processes to be able to react to those sort of changes. Anything like firm closures or intervention could impact your transactions significantly. And it may be that the biggest benefit to you there is that this element of lawyer checker is all about time saving. So when something untoward happens or difficult happens, you can make decisions quicker. And our reports are done in real time, so we'll tell you about this within your results. A good example of how this happens in reality is, let's use the intervention example. So there's a firm last week in Yorkshire called North Yorkshire Law that were intervened by the SRA. And we had one particular client who had carried out a search against that firm early this month. with a completion date towards the end of the month. So when you order a lawyer checker search, we ask for a proposed completion date. And many people ask us why we actually do that. And the reason for that is that we can look, if something changes quickly, we can pick up the phone and say, do you realize that that matter you've got for completion later this month, that firm has just been intervened by the regulator? And we also use credit safe data. Again, this is something that not many people know. And hopefully what I'm doing here is building up a wider picture as to how we use some of this data to help our law firms with the whole funds transfer journey and funds transfer process. And we use credit safe data to monitor the financial statuses of firms. So if there's anything we think is coming our way, it's really important that we're ahead of that. And that obviously uses some information from Companies House, which is really helpful too. Again, if we think there's a meaningful impact on that sort of thing, we will tell you. One of the questions that we get asked an awful lot is, when should we do a lawyer checker search? And we see a mixture of ways that firms do that. Our best practice is that you should do the search as early as you can, so as soon as you can get bank details. The reason being is we have something within our system called a free update search. And again, this is one of those things that I think often people miss out with regards to us, because it's an underused part of our platform. The free refresh search effectively lets you do the search early, and then just before completion, you can go in and you can update the search. So if there is a change on a particular matter, we will notify you when you do that update search. So a good example of that is you might have searched them you might have searched them before and the result is a frequent. And going back to what we talked about with regards to the SRA data, the way that we relay that back is in a result called, in brackets, with a notice. So you can get a frequent with a notice, you can get an infrequent with a notice, and very rare circumstances, you may get an unknown with a notice. So that notice is effectively saying there is a piece of information from the list that I talked through that ultimately you need to eyeball to make sure that you're happy that that is not going to negatively impact the transaction or matter. So I think that free update search is a really underused part of our functionality, which I would encourage you to take advantage of if you're a lawyer checker customer. And I think what we're talking about here wraps up into a wider picture of enhanced due diligence. So I think the way that risk management is going and has gone in the last few years is all about evidencing and being able to demonstrate why you made a particular decision. So we've built Lawyer Checker with this in mind, so that you've got an evidenceable PDF that sits on your file that explains your decision making. So if you have an infrequent or an unknown, you may just note on your file, having done the lawyer checker, why you decided to send the money, because it was clear from the infrequent result that that was the reason they were infrequent. And if something goes wrong and you don't have anything to show your regulator as to why you action something in a particular way, that's ultimately where problems start to occur. So I think one of the great advantages of us that people often forget about is we sit in the background of files, we're evidenceable, we're clear. Things like phone calls, although good fraud tools, aren't necessarily the perfect layer of protection. And if you use something like Lender Exchange to manage bank transfers, you're going to have to screenshot or snip something, and you're not getting the data that you're getting from Lawyer Checker with regards to some of the enhanced due diligence information that we've talked about. And speaking of your regulator, I think we sit nicely in terms of what the SRA ask from people. So Code of Conduct for Firms 5.2 is about safeguarding client money and assets. I think we really help with that. And also, it talks about keep and maintain records to demonstrate compliance with your obligations under the SRA's regulatory arrangements. I think we sit nicely with that too, and also with the principles in terms of acting with integrity and acting in a way that upholds trust and confidence in the profession. One of the things that I often say to people is, if you're only doing a lawyer checker search on a certain number of transactions, what happens if one of the other transactions goes wrong? And how would you feel about explaining that as to why you didn't do a lawyer checker search on that one if things go wrong and the money ultimately goes missing? So our best practice is to adopt a blanket policy, because actually the information that we've talked about this morning and the information that we looked at is probably just as valuable to you as it is in dealing with a local firm than it is in dealing with another firm halfway across the country, because ultimately you don't necessarily know what's going on behind closed doors, and you really need to have that information easily to access. And I think one of the big bits of feedback that we get from our clients is that it's the fee earners and the people on the front line that really value some of these tools and some of this information, and that's who gets quite a lot of benefit from that. And talking of benefits, knowledge is power. So one of the great benefits of working with us is you're up to date on risks at all times. I think time saving is a really key benefit in terms of the area that we've focused on this morning. We've talked about evidencing, and I briefly talked about the assurance aspect. So feeling comfortable that you're using the experts in relation to this and take away some of the stress from funds transfers. And if you're a smaller business, it might be taking away some of the stress from your accounts departments. If you're a medium-sized business and you're a head of department, it actually might be able to save you some time and make your life a little bit easier. We talked about the free refresh search. All our results are available in PDF, which you receive from us, and we integrate with most case management and practice management systems. We also work with most search providers, so there's lots of different ways you can consume Lawyer Checker in order to make it as easy as possible for you. And you're working with experts in this field who live and breathe this. As I said earlier on the call, we get out of bed in the morning to help protect law firms. That's what we're really passionate about doing. And hopefully we can be a trusted provider in that space for anything fraud or cyber related. So how can we help you? So if you're not a Lawyer Checker client, you're more than welcome to book in some sort of demonstration with us. Or if you're an existing Lawyer Checker client, you can book in a call with one of your key relationship managers. So I just put a poll on the chat on the right hand side. So if you'd like to set up a call with your relationship manager, you just need to click yes and we'll arrange that. We take a great deal of pride in training. So we think training and customer success is really important. So we offer a full onboarding program which will help you embed this into your processes and will help you change client letters. We'll make sure your external and internal risk register is up to date. And we can train your staff in a way that suits your team. Ultimately, we're here to help. We can do live training, we can do video training. And if you speak to one of our experts, they will be more than happy to help you with that. I talked about being a trusted provider with regards to anything fraud and cyber. Obviously, Lawyer Checker account and entity screen is a core part of our business, and is probably what we're most well known for. But we also have our consumer bank account checker product, which helps you mitigate the risk when sending funds to individuals, as well as Third Fort, which is ID and source of funds tool. And I think that's going to be really important with regards to some of the changes coming to the market with Land Registry Safe Harbour, and also a Cyber Essentials Assessment Centre as well. So we help law firms achieve Cyber Essentials certification by being their chosen assessor and acting as a fresh pair of eyes. Good news is we're pretty much on time, so 20 minutes, as I said. Thank you very much for your time and for joining us. I hope what we've gone through this morning has just provided a bit of a wider picture as to how Lawyer Checker is more than just a bank account checker, and it really helps with enhanced due diligence and will hopefully help you more robust from funds transfer fraud, especially at a time like now when it's a really busy market. People are stressed, people have high caseloads, there's a lot happening, and now is more important than ever to make sure you're really careful where funds transfers are concerned. So thank you very much for your time. I'll let you all get back to your lunch times as it nearly is now. But yeah, really appreciate you joining us. We'll send out a copy of the recording to those people that couldn't make it. And if you want to share that with colleagues, you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.